Welcome back. In a previous video, we talked about the bell-shaped curve and why it was important to consider the bell-shaped curve when you're buying a house, no matter what the market condition is, whether it's a good market or a bad market. So what we're going to do in this video is figure out if we can judge what market we're in. And we're going to look at the best practices that we can use to do that. In doing that, we're going to go to a website called Zillow.com. And Zillow, I like to use Zillow for this one thing in particular because it has 10 years of market data. And when we're looking at market data and trying to judge where the market's going, we know that history repeats itself. So we're going to kind of look at where we've been, where we are now, and try and figure out where we're going to go based on the history. So let's go ahead and go to my computer. We'll break away now and take a look at Zillow and their website and what they have to show us. Thank you for enduring my Zillow presentation. Now let's go back to my drawing, and trust me, I'm a much better realtor than I am an artist. So what we saw in that quick little presentation with Zillow is that we saw a peak, we saw a valley, and we see that the market is coming back up. Well, we know from years of history that the market, especially here in Southern California, moves up and it moves down and it moves up and it moves down and it moves up. All right. We know, again, that it cycles through. That's why they call it a market cycle. What I learned actually early in my real estate career is that these market cycles tend to go on average about 10 years, from bad to good. So these markets run about 10 years long. And during those 10 years, we typically see the market values double. So if you bought a house at the bottom of the market for $150, if this is true, then the top of the market it would be worth about $300,000. Now, when I heard that, I thought, this guy that's telling me this is crazy. He's got to be crazy. That can't be true. It can't be real. And then I actually sat in with an investor who said, look, before I invest any money in the Southern California real estate market, and again, Southern California is a little bit different than the rest of the world. There are a few areas that kind of track with Southern California, but he was investing his money here, so that's really all that he was studying. And he said, I'm going to find out what the market does. He went to the library because Google wasn't around back then. And he pulls up 100 years of articles, news magazines, anything he could find on microfiche that had to do with the real estate market in Southern California. And he found that this is true, with one exception at that time. And that one exception was back in the 80s, where the market tripled. Now, he was investing in the early 90s, and he kept on going. And of course, we went through our doubling, and then in '03, so the bottom of the market, the last market, before the market that we just came out of, that market was about 1993. That was about the bottom. 93, 95, somewhere in that range. So the top of the market 10 years later should have been 2003. And it actually was. That was the top of the market. But the market kept on going. So we had another tripling. So he saw it in the 80s. We saw it again in 2003, where the market kept on going and kind of it peaked in '07 and started coming down in '08. So that was kind of the tip of the top. So I thought, this is crazy. That can't be accurate before we hit the top of the market. And so I actually did some research. This is back in about '04, maybe '05. I started looking at previous sales, and I thought, well, who could I look at? Well, my aunt and uncle had owned their house since like 1970. And in 1970, they paid about $40,000 for their house. By the way, they were fretting over their $138 a month payment. And anybody had come to them back then and said, hey, in about 10 years, your house is going to be worth $80,000, they would have said, you are nuts. There's no way. Who could afford it, right? We could hardly afford this $138 a month payment. Who could afford double that? Well, it actually happened. I did the math. I looked at the market trends. I looked at what had happened, and their house in 1980 was worth $80,000. 90 would have been worth $160. 2000 would have been worth $320. And then, of course, we saw the crash in about '08, but if it kept on going to 2010, it should have been worth $640. But again, we saw tripling. Their house, I took a look when I did the research, and again, I think it was '05. '05, their house was worth about $750,000. Remember, you're crazy if it's going to double. And it's done way, way, way more than double. So back to Zillow. Here's what we've learned when we took a look at the market trends in Zillow. Again, we're trying to figure out how do we judge where we are in the market and what the market's going to do. So in Zillow, we noticed that we came in and took a look, and the market had really taken a dive. And the bottom of the market was between 2009 to 2011. That's what we saw in Zillow, 2011. And then it started coming up a little bit, and Zillow shows us as being about right here. Now that's going to change in a little bit for each area that you might look at. So it's going to be nuanced. Again, remember, older, farther away from like the center of where business is. Those are going to be a little bit softer markets. But here in the example that we looked at, we're near the peak. Now here's what usually happens when we get to the peak, or when we get to the level of the last peak. The market tends to try and push this. We call this resistance. It tries to push on the resistance, and the minute it breaks through that resistance, it's like skyrockets. 100 years of real estate, this has always happened. Now, can I guarantee that it's going to happen this time? Absolutely not. We're in some interesting times as far as the economy goes. But if this economy doesn't go the way of the dodo, I think we're looking at being poised to capitalize on the market and really be in a great position. So all that to say, you could have bought here and done very well, and perhaps you did. In fact, you might be looking at trading your home up, and if you did that, I think we're still in a great spot for you to really see some great appreciation. This is a great way to really maximize the dollars, protect yourself against a down market, because remember, the market moves up and the market moves down. So after the skyrocket, we will see a down market. It's just the way it goes in 100 years of real estate. But if you're buying now and you're buying smart based on the top of the bell-shaped curve, I think you're going to be putting yourself in a wonderful position to really capitalize on the market. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope you enjoyed the video as much as I enjoyed making it. Go make it a great day. We'll see you soon.